Thank you so much, Ambereen. Um, Glad to be here. Welcome everyone to this panel. And we've got some amazing speakers with us today. All of them are building some brilliant companies, some of the most well-funded startups in Pakistan. I think everybody knows all the panelists here, but for those who are not familiar with them, I'll ask each one of you to maybe quickly introduce yourself in 30, 40 seconds, talk a little bit about what your company does, and then we'll quickly jump into the questions. Starting off with Omer from SadaPay.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Thanks, Zubair. My name is Omer Salimullah. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at SadaPay. We're building a fintech platform to make the financial lives of the average Pakistani much simpler. It's in the name. We're just trying to make everything sada for our users. Finance is complicated. We're here to make it sada.
Ovais, if you can talk a little bit about yourself and Dastgyr.
Yeah, thanks, Zubair. So I'm Ovais, one of the co-founders for Dastgyr. We are basically in a business of simplifying the lives of retailers by connecting them with suppliers. And those suppliers can practically range from large manufacturers to small wholesalers, and also to provide them with working capital access by providing the buy now, pay later feature. So yeah, previously I was part of some well-funded and good startups like Careem and Airlift, which have went on to create some good stories in Pakistan.
Thank you, Wes. Muneeb, if you can talk a little bit about Bykea.
Yes, hello. I'm Muneeb Maayr. I'm founder at Bykea. We are a platform for mobility, commerce, and payments, and today are probably the largest vehicle fleet operator in the country. I think nearly about 50,000 now, monthly active, and we can reach at least 30 million people today in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad in under 5 minutes. So it's a powerful on-demand platform.
Right. Thank you. Arif, I think, will join us in a few minutes. But in the meanwhile, we can just start with the questions and, talk a little bit about what has been happening. So Bykea raised its Series B, if I remember correctly, in 2020, September it was, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a little over $13 million, which was obviously Nasper's first investment into Pakistan. They're now known as Process. So a lot has changed since then. What has happened in the last 2 years, Muneeb? What do you think are some of the key factors that are fueling the acceleration that we're seeing in investments and both, quality of founders and the investors that are coming to Pakistan?
So I think two things have happened. One is time, of course, right? I mean, if you generally think Pakistan is about 6-7 years behind Indonesia and most of Southeast Asia. So I think the time has come for Pakistan to be an attractive destination to deploy capital. The second, perhaps, part is that America has printed $7 trillion. And a lot of that capital is making its way to Latin America, India. So India has actually received over $20 billion in the last year. Pakistan has received, obviously, I think north of 200. So it's not a Pakistan-specific, time. And the third is, I think, founder quality is significantly improving. You have well-educated, exposed founders of Pakistani origin who are coming back to essentially build businesses here.
Right. Thank you, Muneeb. Omer, I'm also going to ask you the same question. But before I do that, I'd love to understand how somebody who has worked in the traditional banking sector for so long made the switch to a fintech.
Really easily. Once you work in the traditional financial services sector here in Pakistan, that's a very, very easy decision. No, I think that I mean, there are headwinds all over the world. I think Muneeb rightly pointed out that we're a little late to the party. There's no question about it. But it's inevitable, right? Like, how long are you going to resist the winds of change? I don't want to be poetic, but it's impossible to do this. So fintech is going to be a reality in Pakistan. There is no question about it. It is a young, digitally savvy population, which is sick and tired of how financial services are being delivered in the traditional sense. So it's a market that's ripe for disruption. It's a big word, and we have a long way to go. There's no question about it. But it's inevitable. So I do feel that there are generally the banks are super profitable at the moment, and that's their weakness. That is their blind spot. Where I mean, when nothing succeeds like success, right? But I think what they're ignoring is the fact that there are over like geopolitical as well as socio-economic trends here in Pakistan that are inevitably leading us to digitization. And um, one of the lowest hanging fruits in Pakistan to digitize very, very quickly and easily is fintech. So it was a very, very easy decision for me. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad that I've been able to play a small part in starting this trend. Long way to go, but it's an interesting start.
Right. Thank you, Umar. Arif has also joined. Arif, welcome to the panel. If you can quickly introduce yourself and Stars Play Pakistan for the audience who have joined us.
Sure. Thank you. And first, my apologies for being late. Quick introduction. I'm one of the founders at Stars Play Pakistan. Stars Play is a joint venture between Stars Play Arabia, which is a leading streaming service in about 20 countries. It actually beats Netflix in Saudi as well as the UAE markets. That's a joint venture between Stars Play and the Cinepax Group in Pakistan. And I'm also a partner at 47 Ventures for Fund 2, which should be launching in January. So that's my quick introduction.
Right. Thank you, Arif. Wes, you worked with Kareem for over a year, and then you were one of the founding members of Airlift that has gone on to raise over $100 million in Pakistan and are now looking to expand internationally. And then you co-founded Dastgyr. Tell us about your evolution as somebody who worked as founding member of a company that has become really big in such a short time, and also speak about the role of Kareem in your journey as a founder, and how much do you think Kareem has what kind of role Kareem has played in the ecosystem until now? What do you think of that?
Yeah. So Zubair, Kareem was basically a very sort of like a turning point in my career, because when I joined Kareem had basically just started off in Pakistan and was gaining some incredible traction in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad back then. So when I joined the organization, I was surrounded by some very inspirational leaders like Junaid Iqbal, Mudassir Sheikha, and the kind of mission that they were on, that was sort of like something that everyone at that time was able to pick up. And they were building an organization that was on a mission to simplify lives for not just the customers, but also the supply side of things like captains and drivers. So that was pretty inspirational for me, and that is when I decided, okay, if I have to do something, it has to be around solving a major problem like that in Pakistan. And when Airlift came around, and since I was very close to ride hailing itself, it was a pretty easy decision for us, because mass transit is, everyone knows in Pakistan how big of a problem it is in Pakistan. So it was a pretty easy decision. And what we were able to build in the following 16 months until pandemic happened, it was pretty insane. We were able to scale from 0 to 40,000 rides, able to build the technology from scratch, and attract millions of investments, making records right, left, right, and center. So it was pretty intense, but it was mostly due to crazy execution that we had at Airlift. And when pandemic happened, and then we started realizing that the supply chain in Pakistan is pretty broken, and that sort of like resurfaced when pandemic happened, and the distribution business got impacted very severely. And that's when we branched out to start Dastgyr. And alhamdulillah, in the last 14 months, we have been able to serve about more than 30,000 plus retailers in Karachi and Lahore. So I think if to tie it down back to what happened at Kareem and Airlift, I think it was mostly around the culture for solving problems day in, day out, but also staying very close to the long-term mission of simplifying lives for our customers and also the suppliers.
Right. Thank you, Wes. Muneeb, you have been building technology companies in Pakistan since a very long time. You were the one who started Daraz here, and then you went on to build Bykea. You explained some of the things that have changed in the ecosystem over the last 2-3 years, but you've been having conversations with investors for a very long time. how their sentiments have changed about Pakistan as a market, and do you see more confidence among them investing into Pakistan right now, and how do you see it will continue to change in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think from the lens of like global investors, right? They have to deploy capital that gives a better return than the stock market, or capital that can potentially give a better return than the crypto market, right? Because all of this is venture. Venture means basically it's a bet, right? And I think it was a matter of time that basically allocation would commence for Pakistan. And to be candid, I think when we started this mission of startups in Pakistan, Pakistan was never really on the horizon. I mean, the capital was being deployed in India, Latin America, then started making its way to Indonesia and Vietnam. And so Pakistan is getting attractive now because I think some of the other geographies are getting, one, more expensive, and two, I think founder quality in Pakistan is also improving. And three, as investors are looking at their peers deploying small amounts of checks into Pakistan, or for that matter, large amounts of checks into Pakistan, that trust in essentially deploying capital from their own funds is increasing. So I think it'll keep getting better. I do think that the window of the huge influx of capital that you've seen in the last 1 year is a short-lived window. It's really because of money supply. I don't see money supply contracting anytime soon, but I do feel that this is a bit of a blip, right? Having said that, it's a bit of a blip globally. For Pakistan, given that we're getting crumbs anyways from that blip, I think that it will keep increasing.
Right. Thank you, Muneeb. Arif, tell us a little bit more about Stars Play in Pakistan. A normal idea in Pakistan is that the consumers are not willing to pay for digital products. Now you've built a customer base, and Stars Play, as you said, is the largest player in Saudi and some of the other Middle Eastern markets. How have you been able to capture the market share in Pakistan, and what kind of feedback have you come across when it comes to the willingness of consumers to pay for a product that's digital?
Look, I think Pakistan is definitely a tough market as far as willingness to pay. But we're on a very, very nice run rate right now. Right now we're at close to about 50 million rupees a month and growing at about 10-15% every month. So people are willing to pay. Now, obviously, that is a shadow of what YouTube is probably generating out of Pakistan, because Pakistanis like stuff for free. Given that there are a lot of different ways that you can go skin this, right? One of them is ease of pricing. Now, 95% of our people sign on at our 5 rupee a day product. Most people just don't have balances, right? Because again, it comes down to billing. How do you bill in a country which doesn't have credit cards? You need to go to the telcos. For the telco, it's a prepay market. Nobody has a balance. So rather than selling them a monthly package or a weekly package, you go to step-down charging, go to a daily package, right? It's like that old levers sachet strategy that they did 20 years ago. So the Pakistan market is here. It's big. There is the possibility of getting people to pay if you give them quality product, but you have to do it intelligently.
Right. Thank you. Omer, you work very closely with the regulators. SadaPay is still in its test launch phase. It's expected to get the full EMI license very soon. How much of a role do you think regulators have played in getting ecosystem to the point where it is today?
Oh, it's a huge role. So I think that for the last 2 years, State Bank has rolled out a very, very sensible policy around a lot of different things. So I think one of the things that they did was making IBFT free when the pandemic started. That kind of unlocked.
But they took that decision back. I mean,
they have
recently
taken that decision back. They've still done it in an intelligent way, in which the bottom of the pyramid, which are the most price sensitive when it comes to this, are still okay. It's free cumulatively if you don't send more than 25,000 rupees in a month. So that covers a huge chunk of Pakistan. But what that has done, Zubair, is that I think that's broken that myth in Pakistan that people avoid digitization, merchants avoid digitization due to tax issues. That is not our experience. I've spent a long time in this market. People are not running away from documentation. What they are running away from unfair fees. And so, till in a poor country, as long as we have digital transaction more expensive than cash, you will have this issue where people avoid doing digital financial transactions, right? It just cannot work this way. Another step that State Bank took was, of course, offering this EMI license. This is the first time in Pakistan that private companies like ours are allowed to solicit deposits and hold deposits from the average Pakistanis, right? So that is a huge step. And now, mashallah, two EMIs have gotten the full license very, very recently, NayaPay and Finja. And so this is an amazing turn of events in a very short space of time. They have also intervened in the merchant acquiring space, where they have made merchant acquiring more attractive as a business for banks and independent merchant acquirers, because that is also another important piece of the puzzle that needs to be solved before we can move towards higher digitalization rates in Pakistan. The full-fledged digital bank license is around the corner. That is going to be another game changer, inshallah, in Pakistan. I think that it's a path for EMIs like us to be on, and I think that doing these things right after one another is going to be amazing. RAS is hopefully going to be implemented the right way, and if that happens, then that is also going to be a huge a positive development in this space. So we love working with the State Bank. I think they have played a very, very important role in getting fintech where it is now. Now I think it's up to us to execute right. What's missing, what's the final piece of the puzzle that's missing, is great execution when it comes to fintech. And so hopefully a lot of us are able to execute really, really well in the niches that we're operating in. And, we take Pakistani financial services to the next level, inshallah.
Right. Thank you. Ovais, there have been some doubts around Pakistan, if Pakistan is a large enough market to produce multiple unicorns that are only present in Pakistan. And we're seeing a lot of Pakistani startups now looking at international expansion. Some have already started the expansion, and some are exploring the option. What do you think, in your experience, first working for these different companies and then starting Dastgyr, and obviously, solving these problems for small retailers? What's your opinion on whether Pakistan is a large enough market to produce multiple unicorns without them having to expand internationally?
Yeah, I definitely am a huge proponent of Pakistan's growth over the last few years, and I think there's a chance for us to create multiple unicorns within Pakistan. If not today, then perhaps in the next 2 to 5 years. Definitely, yes, there's a chance to do it. I think the reason why some of the startups are expanding globally is not because there's not enough room in Pakistan left, but mostly because there's a lot of chance and opportunity for the Pakistani startups to make their name globally, and also to attract foreign investments, because despite everything that has happened in the last 12 to 14 months, raising multiple millions of dollars, we are still in the very nascent stages of fundraising here in Pakistan. So by creating a global play and being present in some established markets, which are a little ahead of us, similar, like, for example, Southeast Asia, Egypt, North Africa, and Middle East, they might be able to gain some investor attraction by being a global play there. I mean, some of the factors that we are all aware of is the opportunity in Pakistan by having one of the largest young population percentage across the globe, making double-digit growth on consumer spending every year on year. So that also has a sort of like a trickle-down effect on having businesses which are growing at unprecedented rates. So definitely there's a huge opportunity in Pakistan, and there's no doubt that we can have multiple unicorns in this space, even if not today, then at least in the next few years.
Right. Thank you. Arif, tell us a little bit more about 47 Ventures. You are joining the second fund as a partner, and you're going to be investing in Pakistani startups. What's your thesis, and how is the fundraising coming along?
Fundraising is actually pretty positive. I actually need to head back to the Valley in the next week. As far as the thesis goes, there is a lot of seed capital coming in. So we are actually changing our focus. 47 Ventures, the first fund, did a lot of seed. A $300,000 check, a $500,000 check, then it started moving up to $1 million check. For us, just looking at the amount of liquidity headed this way, and again, touching upon Muneeb's earlier point, there's an ocean of liquidity out there. And I think that is also driving a lot of this investment flow into Pakistan, where people are now starting to put it on their asset allocation table. So given that larger amount of liquidity, given that now these startups are going to start maturing and needing bigger checks, seeing the competitive environments are driving up costs, right? Look at what your digital marketing guys are costing now versus a year ago. You're going to need far bigger checks. So we would rather be a little bit further down the chain. We're going to move up more towards a Series A or a Series B, maybe about a $5 million check target, rather than where we were before. For us, it's a much better return on our time. It cuts down risk. It lets us deal with founders who are a little bit more seasoned versus the guys who are out there with a lot of PowerPoint and who are very raw but are looking at a frothy market saying, oh, I should have a $10 million valuation just because XYZ guy did, right? And you're seeing a lot of that all over the place right now. There's this real sugar high, feel good thing in the market going on right now. So yeah, we'd like to be a little bit further down the line. We just feel it's safer, it's a better use of our time. It takes the same amount of time to be on the $5 million transaction as it is to be on a $500,000 transaction. In fact, the smaller transaction probably sucks up more of your management time because you're having to teach people stuff and you don't have enough buffers really for any mistakes. So yeah, that's our thesis right now.
Right. I think there is still a lot of gap at the pre-seed stage in Pakistan, but obviously, there are very few investors who are investing locally in Series A. I think even for Bykea, when the Series A happened, it was perhaps co-led by Sarmaya Kar and MEVP, and there were a few other investors also present in the round. And lately, Zan Capital has also come into the space to lead the Series A rounds, local Series A rounds. But it's good to see 47 Ventures also getting into this space and more capital being available for the Series A companies in Pakistan. Muneeb, you've talked a lot about a large part of Pakistani population not being part of the addressable market in Pakistan. They cannot write English, and most of the keyboards, most of the apps in Pakistan, they are primarily in English. So they are not being addressed by the technology startups. What is it that the startups and other stakeholders of the ecosystem can do to expand the addressable market in Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think, listen, I think it's easier adoption, faster adoption for the 10 to 20 odd million English speaking people in this country, right? But you've still got about 200 million people if you are trying to address that market, that is. Many people are not, let's be candid. Like many people don't really care about that market because they're like, okay, let's just get traction in 5 million, then open up another geography, and that's how you increase the TAM, the total addressable market, right? So if you are trying to address the TAM of Pakistan, which is the 5th largest population in the world, then you've got to make a few things simpler. You've got to quit trying to search, have people search, but have a catalog type journey because people don't have the propensity to search and type. It's got to be more visual. You've got to focus on UX mostly around Urdu so that people can comprehend things. And then the checkout needs to be super simple, right? Even payments, for example, Ovais spoke about carrier billing, I think. So carrier billing should also be seamless, right? with as few steps as possible. So I think you can address a large TAM. I think if the telcos were able to, a decade back, I think the time for tech is coming. If people can operate TikTok, then they can surely operate apps built by Pakistanis. We just need to focus on product from a UX and UI experience as well.
Right. Omer, SadaPay has been building its product for the last 2 years, and you've raised at least 2 rounds of funding, probably raising more right now or not. But when it comes to unit economics of some of the similar fintechs across the world, there have been a lot of questions around how would they reach profitability. Obviously, maybe the path to profitability for a fintech like SadaPay is still clearer than an e-commerce play in Pakistan, a B2C e-commerce play in Pakistan. But what do you think about this? You're currently building and you have a very large wait list, but is unit economics an area of concern for a company like SadaPay, or the startups are just chasing the $1 billion valuation mark? The startups are after chasing that $1 billion valuation mark, and they completely forget unit economics, and until they reach a point when they have to care for that.
Yeah, a great question. So I think for us, unit economics is not an area of concern, but an area of focus. So we definitely are focusing on making sure that we eventually get to profitability. This is not a grow at all costs sort of scenario with SadaPay. We want to have a sustainable long-term business. I think that how we cannot compare to what's happening in the international market is that Pakistan is still a very, very, very cheap market to operate. I think one of the things that is very attractive to investors right now in the conversations that we've been having is that really, really great talent is available at a serious discount according to international standards. So with SadaPay not having a physical footprint like banks, we're going to be super efficient when it comes to the number of people that we're hiring. We don't want to overhire. Definitely, the charm of putting out a digital platform is that you can operate a very large and profitable platform with having very few people. So that's a huge expense that is under control. So far for us, alhamdulillah, the marketing is not an expense. We have a wait list it's completely organic. We'll launch to it when we get to it, inshallah. And then of course there will be marketing that we'll do, but so far we haven't spent a single dime on marketing. So yeah, I think that unit economics are important. I don't think Pakistan can afford startups burning money and not getting anywhere, right? So I don't think that is a good look for Pakistan. I think we need founders who are cognizant of the bottom line. Growth is very important. You are a startup, you have to grow at a certain rate, but you need founders who are very focused on the bottom line as well. We are at SadaPay, that's for sure.
Right. Thank you. Arif, when you are going to start making these investments, what are some of the things that you're looking at when it comes to the kind of companies that you want to invest in? And moving forward, what do you think the ecosystem is going to look like 2 years from now?
Well, that's $1 million or $1 billion question, right? Or as far as the second part. Look, I think when we look at companies, they have to make money, or they have to have a way forward to make money. We're just not in it to go out there for valuation after valuation without an underlying business being sound. Obviously, how do you get there? Big addressable market, great founders, all the usual building blocks. Then what we're really looking at also is exits. How are we going to exit ourselves, right? Because your LPs have to get that check at the end of the month, at the end of the fund. Now, is there going to be somebody out there who's going to pay you for this? Can you list it? Right now, in my view, the one real unicorn exit out of Pakistan that really started in Pakistan was Zameen, right? ENPG, which most people don't even abroad in Dubai don't even see it as a Pakistani company anymore. The Kareem's, even Stars Play, which is now hitting that $1 billion valuation, if you take it throughout its global valuation, is registered as a Dubai company. So these are the areas we look at. How do we exit? Who are the founders? Addressable market. Now, what are the areas I like? I think the agroeconomy is very, very interesting. That's something that very little work has been done on. But our neighbors across the border have done a lot of startups there, and a lot of money has been made over there. I think education tech is something that we can do a lot on. Logistics, there are still some areas to go to. I mean, there's been a lot of activity around it, whether it was the hyperlocal or the long haul logistics. There's already been a lot of players coming in on that, but I think there's still areas there. Video gaming, we're doing very well on. We have an existing investment in that, which has just gone crazy valuation wise, and we're seeing some other potential areas on that. So these are a couple of areas I like.
Right, right. Thank you. Speaking of exits, Muneeb, where do you think the exits are going to come from? How long do you think we'll have to wait before we see, a significantly large tech exit come out of Pakistan? And while you're answering that, can you also share if Bykea is going to allow any secondaries in its next round, which is going to be Series C? It's normally it has almost become a standard in the global tech ecosystem, but we've rarely seen this in Pakistan, except the Y, which has allowed some of its investors to sell, I think, in their Series B round.
Yeah, so I think first of all, how do you become a unicorn? You become a unicorn if your GMV is between 500 million and $1 billion, right? At least, right? And then, of course, from a burn perspective, the question is: are you growing or not growing? And how much burn do you want? Do you want to go public, or do you want to basically sell to a strategic, right? So if you want to go public, most likely not in Pakistan. If you want to go public in abroad, most likely the US, then you've got to have some path to profitability. Now, of course, that's not what we've seen in this region. What we've seen, the exits that you've seen, are companies that are burning like no tomorrow, but they've exited to someone who has gone public, right? So I think. To answer your question, I mean, what path would Bykea take? I don't really know, but I think the future, there are options out there, right? The options are you build your GMV or your ARR, and your ARR, of course, is your commission times your times your GMV, right? It's not like most people are confusing ARR with GMV, which is, I think, wrong. But essentially, you've got to have enough throughput. Now, I don't think there are too many companies within Pakistan in the next 3-4 years who are going to be able to rack up between $500 million and $1 billion in GMV. I don't think there are too many. Okay, so I don't think we should be like hung up on many unicorns. I think Pakistan may have a couple of unicorns. If you're talking about Pakistan specifically, right? Arif, for example, spoke about Zameen. Zameen's not really a Pakistani company. I mean, it's got
Absolutely.
one leg in Pakistan, but it's a regional play, and so it can't be qualified as a Pakistani unicorn, right?
Right.
By that premise, you could say SNL is a Pakistani unicorn, or like if you have a Pakistani founder, you could have what's that trucking company? That's a Pakistani.
Keep
They're
trucking.
not Pakistani origin people who are trying to save money by essentially hiring people in Pakistan. So it's not really a Pakistani unicorn, right? The Pakistani unicorn is: are you building a product that is exclusively used in Pakistan, and is that going to be a unicorn? I think a handful of opportunities may prop up. I think strategics is also a possibility. We have no precedence of strategics, buying, companies with such high valuations yet. But I think the future is absolutely out there. I think the future of large valuations is not going to be in telcos and not going to be in FMCGs. It's going to be in perhaps tech. And to answer your second question around secondaries, I can't really answer that. I mean, ultimately, if earliest stage investors want some level of liquidity, they can have it. But I think for most investors in Bykea, the reality is, listen, the business is really growing, and it's growing basically without burning a lot of money relative to others, right? And so is this the time to basically take a check and invest somewhere else? I wouldn't advise it, but it's possible.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think when Arif spoke about Zameen, what he was saying is that it's one of those companies which started in Pakistan and then became a unicorn. Obviously, it cannot be considered a Pakistani unicorn, but it had Pakistani origins. Kareem started in UAE. Keep Truckin is obviously not a Pakistani company at all. Okay, I think we are going to wrap this up. Omer, your final thoughts. What's next for SadaPay, and where do you see the ecosystem going in the next 2 years?
Well, for us, of course, the next thing is the full launch. We're eagerly awaiting.
Which
Things
is
are all
which is when?
literally $1 billion question.
Okay.
Well, we finalized the SBP inspection, and it went really well, and it's around the corner, inshallah. So the full launch is around the corner, and then we're off to the races. I think that execution is going to be key. I think that we have to be now really, really focused on not the valuations. I think maybe we're asking the wrong questions too early. I think we've been waiting so long that maybe crumbs was a harsh word by Muneeb, but I mean, half a loaf of bread is what we're getting now. And so we've gotten maybe too excited about it, and we're chasing mythical creatures now very quickly. So I think that now founders have to really, really focus on execution. I think one huge bottleneck that we have in Pakistan is talent, and our sins of the past are now coming home to roost, because you can't just pluck out unicorns out of thin air, right? You have to have a company with a lot of talented and motivated people executing a mission flawlessly. Lots of moving parts to that statement, right? So I think we all have to make sure that we get it right. The ecosystem is absolutely on the right path. It is an exciting time to be in tech in Pakistan. There is no question about it. And we should be excited. I don't want to put a damper on it. But I think as far as founders are concerned, as far as people in the ecosystem are concerned, they really should be concentrating on execution rather than valuations.
Right. Thank you, Omer. I think Muneeb had used the word in relative terms. Obviously, India has received more than $26 billion this year, and Pakistan is at about 1% of that, maybe. So
yeah, I get
it does make a lot of sense.
I don't want to be cynical. I was just saying, you've got to look at Latin America. You've got to look at India as well. You can't just say it's all Pakistan's doing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we'll also get there. Ovais, your final remarks. What's next for Dastgyr? How do you see the ecosystem evolving in the next 2 years? If you can, answer this quickly in a minute or two.
Yeah, so I think our particular market, the kind of socioeconomic people that we are dealing with, I think those are learning the technology pretty quickly. It had to be manual in the very early stages, where we had a team who used to onboard the retailers themselves. Now we are seeing a lot of organic signups and a lot of organic orders themselves. So we are seeing a great change, especially in the urban centers like Karachi and Lahore. What would be more interesting now is that once we go into tier 2 and tier 3 cities, like for example, there is in the outskirts of Lahore, in probably the outskirts of Faisalabad, etc. That would be more interesting to see how the penetration there is. I don't remember who said this, but someone said that there's not really a huge TAM out here available in Pakistan. So perhaps that would be a good validation out there, whether the digital adoption is really significant in the tier 2, tier 3 markets, because that's the large chunk of the Pakistani population, about 63% of them. So I don't know what the future looks like for us, but at least in the urban centers, look really, really positive. Let's see how it looks in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities now.
All right. Thank you so much, Ovais. Muneeb, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think, listen, if you look at the 3 cities in this country, that's about Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, that's about 30 million people. If you add another 100 cities, that's another 30, 40 million people, right? So I think we've got to be cognizant of what we call tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and tier 4. And listen, I think this is a big country. We've got to build businesses that will fundamentally solve for the long tail, that solve for the story for Pakistan, which is that it is a very large population. And the only way we're going to be able to grow inside the country is we're able to address that population and hopefully build companies that will have a path to profitability. Because I don't think building anything that perpetually basically will require capital to beef up the valuation is going to be a long-lived story. But I think we've got the founders, we've got the capital now. It's time to execute. Just like Omer said, it's I think all of us is gonna. It's time to hit the ground running.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in. I think Arif dropped off. He's unable to join again. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Back to Amreen.